Hello, traders. My morning video. I will try to keep this as slim as possible here. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and things are going higher, of course, with the markets. As expected, I do have one fairly large position in Netflix calls for the overnight, which seems to be a really nice payday going into today's session. So we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. Uh, Basically, what I'm seeing in the markets and some things I like to look for. First of all, USO, that's an outlier with the whole possible cutting in production thing. Um, so the volumes on USO, I really try to ignore that. But what I do like to see is SPY, and generally speaking, the ES futures and the SPY, you want to see 60% of the overnight inventory. You want to be a 60% or greater SPY of the overnight inventory. And when I see volumes in a morning session that contradict that scenario, so let me show you exactly what happened in the overnight. Let me move this over a little bit here and show you here. In the overnight session, we had 312 contracts in the ES futures. And then if you come down to the NQs, it's 93,000. So basically, one third of the volume, the NQs in the total overnight session. That was from, that's a very long session. From yesterday's close till this morning. That's the total volumes hitting, uh, and that's typical. Okay, so far this morning, I'm seeing a something that an outlier, in my opinion. Since 4 o'clock this morning, these volumes they update. We have almost equal volume with the Qs already this morning. And that's a divergent scenario, in my opinion, of what's going on this morning. And basically, that suggests to me that we've hit a critical level for the Qs where buyers and sellers are meeting, um, possibly a significant resistance zone for the Qs going into today's session. So, without even looking at a chart, I already realize that there's something going on beneath the hood here that we should take note going forward here. Okay, let me go ahead and I'll go ahead and get this out of the way for a sec. Okay, so far this morning, okay, one second here. Let me get it down to a time frame we can actually use. So basically, what we got going on here on the markets this morning, we have this inverted head and shoulder pattern situation trying to poke out of the downtrend this morning on the ES futures. We have filled the gap, which we didn't fill the gap before on the ES futures. And we had a 2008 volume. This is the highest point to do business for 2018. 2018 highest point to do business. So this tends to act as a resistance zone in markets whenever you come into a level of significance like that. We broke down away from that, so now it's acting as resistance until we prove otherwise. So keep that in mind going forward. We have multiple reasons to think that we are running into some resistance here on the ES futures. That's my first look at here, and plus we've already tagged the expected move for last week. We've already blew through this week's expected move. Now we've actually tagged last week's expected move as well. So that's acting as an additional resistance zone going into today's session. So something to keep note going forward in today's trading. Okay. And the Qs, like I had mentioned, the Qs and that volume. What's going on there with the volume on the Qs? Okay, here's what I'm seeing. Okay, we come right up here on wait one second here. I was on the Qs. I saw something earlier. Oh yeah. This is a dual resistance zone. This is actually for 3 weeks on the Qs. Right here, right now, is the zone for 3 weeks now that has acted as resistance on the Qs. And seeing the Qs catching the additional volume spike this morning, we haven't seen that for several weeks. We are seeing that this morning. So I am thinking that we are into a resistance zone for the tech to open today's session. So just keep that in mind going forward here. This is a sort of ugly looking inverted head and shoulders. Um, yeah, but it is a valid uh, inverted head and shoulders, in my opinion. Um, so just keep that in mind going forward here. Um, and we are what seems to be, we're breaking above these levels here and we're breaking out above these fans, but our expected market maker moves are telling us that we are in resistance that the charts themselves would not be doing showing us. And if I hadn't been tracking my market maker moves week after week, I wouldn't realize that scenario. So just keep that in mind going forward in your trading. I think this is a max greed area for uh, technology. That means this is the area where you should be taking your profits and initiating new short positions, in my opinion, for tech. But it could be I could be wrong, of course. But this is that is what I'm actually suggesting is setting up here. Now, what's driving these markets? We had a technical cross yesterday to a bullish cross, but next week we have some core critical earnings hitting the tape, and after seeing that cross yesterday, anybody who was short the markets, they were covering their shorts, taking profits going into that news event. Because if you're already sitting on all kinds of profits, you don't want to be going into news events taking the potential you're going to lose those profits going on the news. So basically, markets work as a rubber, like a rubber band. So now what we're doing is we're seeing a relief rally where the shorts are covering, and then next week, whenever the earnings do come out, there's a potential that we could go lower in the markets on those numbers because we've had the bounce back to relieve some of the downward force, in my opinion, and reset a lot of the oscillators for a another leg lower in the markets. Okay, what's going on here? This is not. I would have preferred on typical market corrections, you actually see the small caps leading to the upside for a recovery. And we just simply are it we are still getting a lot of relative weakness in our small caps. And rightfully so, because basically what the Saudis and the Russians are doing here, they're going at war against US oil companies. And that is a major dragging force against the small caps and all that corporate debt against the energy company, U.S. energy companies. And this basically we're going to have if we have a recovery out of this disaster on this coronavirus, this is going to be one of those few situations where Russell is not going to lead us out of it. It's more likely it's the Nasdaq will lead us out of the mess, unfortunately. And any significant recovery in the markets has almost always been led by the small caps, and I just don't see any way that's possible this time around. So, something to keep in mind going forward here. I'm not saying we're going to mark new lows in the market per se, but uh, the hard data is not being digested. I do not think it has been rightfully digested yet. Just how bad the hard data is from the shutdown. So uh, then again, you never know. But seeing a nice little responsive bounce in the markets, this is a dead cat bounce again. Until proven otherwise, and that could reset markets lower, getting a lot of the shorts to cover and giving us a chance to spring back to the downside, in my opinion. Oh, one final note here. Wouldn't you know it? This right here, this is the max greed zone, has been acting as max greed. So that means this is the area where you would typically initiate shorts until proven otherwise. And it's just like I said, this area right here. I mean, one thing about it is in the ETF watch that I showed you earlier, we don't have IWM spiking out on volume. So that is one thing. If the buyers and sellers were really getting interested in liquidating their assets, a strong spike uh, this morning would confirm that situation. And we're not actually getting that yet on our IWM, but I do think we are getting a lot of profit taking showing up in our queues so far. Some takeaways this morning. You see this massive move up in the um, ZNs or 10-year bonds. And basically, right here at the lows, this was the candle right here that started the breakaway pop higher. We've come right back down and we back testing that to the penny basically so far this morning. That further confirms, in my opinion, we might be into a um, uh, topping process in the markets. So we want to watch this. If the ZNs do not make new lows today, and we do start getting a bid in our ZNs, that we might see a bleed off in the markets during today's session. We're already seeing it in the AM. So this is a very important tell going forward in today's markets. Then another one also was the VIX. If I can get to pull up the VX. And basically, we have a multiple bottom right here, right now on our VIX. We are not catching, it doesn't look like we are seeing buying in for insurance yet in our volatility. So, this is something that I want to watch. If we get a continued breakdown on our VIX today, then of course it's going to be supportive of the markets. But actually, right here, right now, is going into the open. Even though we've come back almost 150 points, well, well over 100 points, I think, on the Dow already, off the highs. Um, we're still not seeing insurance being bought for the VIX. So just something to keep on watch. That's the bullish case. We start to get a breakdown on this. We might get a directional move and supporting prices. We may not necessarily get a higher bid in the markets per se, but it does mean that there's not going to be not likely a lot of one-sided directional action in the options markets. So basically, we could be seeing a lot of put action this morning, or we could be seeing a lot of call action this morning if this thing starts breaking down. So keep that in mind going forward. One-sided trades would suggest a trend in one direction or the other, and so far we're not quite getting that. Another thing confirming or suggesting that we're going to get continued weakness today. Earlier this morning, we were getting, well, all morning long, we've been getting a stronger sell off on the front end of the VIX futures on the front end. But what I'm seeing here is an increased bid in the back end. 43 days out, the back end continues to get a stronger bid as the morning goes on here. So that suggests to me that position traders are trying to buy more insurance longer end of the curve. So this is changing. We do have some fairly light volumes here, so this can change rapidly. Just something to keep on watch that they might be buying additional insurance on the long end of the curve at these price points. Okay, some things I'm looking at here. Netflix. I have a really nice position on Netflix going into the open this morning. It has a nice little opening bid, really doji candle so far this morning at these prior highs. We're just a little bit shy of those prior highs here. We have found this is the max greed zone that's been going on, well, for the past couple weeks here on Netflix. So we are in the max greed zone. That's for the past 2-3 weeks for Netflix. The market maker expected move high for 3 weeks straight now. It's 385. The more weeks you have piling up at the same price zone, the more likely you're going to tag that zone. So despite the fact that I'm showing, we're seeing a little bit of downward pressure in the markets this morning. I'm tempted just to go ahead and leave my Netflix calls on for most of today and see if we can come up and hit the 385 area before or higher. Ideally, basically, Netflix is the 393 area. That's the area of most interest. So basically, once we start coming tagging in that, this thing can move relatively fast to the upside if we do get a continued bid in Netflix. So basically, as long as we don't break the overnight lows in Netflix, I'm going to try to let it run and see if we can get responsive bids in this today. Okay. Things happening today. Boeing is getting some action, had an upgrade to buy from neutral, catching a little bit of a bid here. It's dojiing out too so far this morning. It doesn't. Nothing seems to be actually catching much of a bid so far this morning. I do think like I said, we are in a period of uh, a topping period in these markets, possibly. Take Two's catching a nice little bid this morning. They put an overweight rating on that. Basically, all of the gaming stocks are catching a positive notes this morning. Activision also is one of those gaming stocks catching a nice note this morning, and positive overweight comments on that. And then I also mentioned in the Slack room uh, transports, what was going on with transports, and basically the transports were coming into. Let me see here if I can find that real quick. 1 second. Okay, here's what I was seeing with the transports. I think they're going to be running into the 200-day moving average on our transports. So far this morning, it's not really catching. You're not going to be able to see what's happening to it yet here in the pre-market or in our transports. I think we're running up into the 200 back test of the 200-day moving average. We have not tested that yet on our transports. We do have a bullish cross yesterday, continuation. We are seeing some continuation bids in the markets this morning on the transport side. We have some positive notes on CSX to buy from neutral. So this is one of them. And I would be very careful. A lot of these companies, like Norfolk Southern, they got a hold on it. They upgraded it to hold on Norfolk Southern NSC, but it is a major oil mover. So that's one you have to be careful about on that upgrade. It's above the 200 moving average on it too. And these are the railroads. And then we also had Kansas City. That's another one that's a major oil mover. Uh, Keep in mind, they do have some positive. They put that to a buy on Kansas City Southern as well. So some things to be watching here. We do have a gap right above us. This is pretty much a void. So this is the max greed area on these upgrades. So they're upgrading it into significant resistance. So keep in mind, typically you would see profit taking at this level that they are trying to upgrade and push prices outside of the greed area, in my opinion. Another thing I want to talk about here, that's our financials. They're the backbone of the markets for further higher highs. This is one area, in my opinion, so far this morning that is not performing very well. Yes, we're above the trend, the downward trend, and I would have preferred to see a gap and go in the financials. Instead, we're struggling, really struggling here with our financials, and rightfully so. And to be perfectly honest, I'm actually thinking we're going to be coming back down and possibly even back testing down the 200-day moving average on the one hour. That's the scenario that I'm actually thinking. We've come up before, come back down and tested. We're coming up again. Suggests to me that we're probably going to be coming right back down here again in the financials, in my opinion. And we do not have any leaders so far. 5:20 in the morning. None of the major leaders or any banks this morning on my morning scans. As far as the morning scan goes, we have the transports are getting continued short squeeze this morning. In our transports, our Carnival, American Airlines, Delta, continuing to squeeze. They are on the leaderboard for getting basically squeezed to all get out. And then we have Boeing, AMD, Apple, Baba, Gilead, Facebook. They all are active this morning. And so I'll go through a few of those real quick and we'll basically see what I'm seeing here. Boeing, this morning, real small doji on Boeing. I think I already mentioned this one before. Doesn't seem to want to have a continuation, in my opinion. We'll see what happens in today's session. Basically, yesterday we had the short squeeze in Boeing crossing over the line. Are we going to get continuation today? I don't know. We have had continuation. We've had, see right here on this breakout, that was a very big candle the last time at this price point for Boeing. We did have a strong candle in the past. So I would have thought Boeing would have been taken off. Instead, we're actually bleeding lower in the pre-market session. So something to keep in mind whenever something's not doing like it should be doing in the pre-market. I would think Boeing should be at the highs instead of actually finding any type of selling, considering what it did last time at this price point. So keep that in mind going forward in today's session. Some of the things that I'm looking right now. AMD, like I said, the Qs I think are into a resistance area. We have just crossed above the 50% retracement on AMD once again. This is the max greed zone, in my opinion. This is where you should be initiating shorts or taking your profits off the table. AMD and Nvidia, they have been outperforming on the Qs. I'm not saying necessarily you should short this area, but you should be taking profits at this 50% zone because you're going to be getting chopped to death on the options if you try to hold them with an implied volatility crush. Apple, Apple hit the 50% retracement. That's why I really thought we were going to get continuation in the markets today. We are just a hair shy of the actual 50% retracement, in my opinion. So we might actually catch a little bit more responsive buying this morning. Ultimately, the 370, the 273, 34, 24 area, that is a target, upside target. That would support higher prices today, considering we have not tagged that trend line yet on our Fib fans. So that is a bullish scenario for the markets into today's session, in my opinion, uh, knowing that situation for Apple. So that's something to keep in mind going forward. But this thing here is breaking out, so this is not the same as a down here as a max greed scenario. We do have what tends to be a breakout scenario for Apple, so that is more bullish on the markets. Baba, uh, we are pushing out above the max greed area, uh, very, but only slightly. And we are above this week's expected move already for Alibaba. They had a very, very strong catch up in the Chinese equities in the overnight session. And if we do get a continued bid in the markets today, it does make sense that Alibaba it would be trying for the 50% retracement, the 264 area. So we're only a couple dollars away from hitting 50% retracement. So this is a high odds probability we're going to get continued buying into Alibaba, in my opinion. Gilead, this is a coronavirus play, and as these numbers come down, I think you're going to see continuing selling pressure in Gilead with a price target here probably today in the 200 SMA area. So this is a short side candidate, in my opinion, not a long side candidate for Gilead. Uh, Positive news about the coronavirus is negative for Gilead, in my opinion. Facebook, uh, basically, we have a cup and what seems to be a handle. We are testing the range highs, as I mentioned in yesterday's video. We are into last week's expected move. Okay, so instead of having dual expected moves above us, okay, where we're building pressure for a breakout scenario, that we don't have them overlapping. So we don't really have any type of pent up demand for a breakout scenario, in my opinion. So basically, this is a max greed scenario, in my opinion, that you take profits and you initiate shorts at this price point, in my opinion, until proven otherwise on Facebook. Okay, that's just basically some of the few things that I'm seeing in the markets until proven otherwise. Like the video if you like it, and please leave comments. I like hearing all your feedback and inputs and stuff like that. Like I said, my only trade I have on right now that's Netflix calls going into today's session. I wanted to own the strongest stock, one of the strongest stocks going into today's session, thinking that we were going to get continuation to the upside, which we are. I did want Microsoft wasn't showing up on the scan, but I did want to point out something was going on here with Microsoft. Um, we are breaking out above the 50% retracement on Microsoft. So this thing is really showing some relative strength versus a lot of the rest of the markets. And like I said, the Apple and the Alibaba both showing signs that we might get a little bit more bid in the opening session. So, I don't want to say we need to short the markets quite yet. I do think it is a good time to start looking to take some profits off. And after seeing all the charts and stuff, that confirms my scenario to let my Netflix run a little bit on the open this morning. We might actually start seeing some a little bit more bid in the opening session, in my opinion. So something to keep in mind going forward. But I do think we are running into the max greed area, and you need to start taking some of your profits. If you got really nice profits, you need to get some off the table sooner than later. Thanks a lot, and please, like me if you like me, and retweet it too. I put it on Twitter, so if you get a chance, find me on Gumby9662 on Twitter, and follow me if you're not, and please retweet me whenever you get a chance. Thanks a lot.